1. Today I met my boyfriend at the bank. We did our business, then walked back to the car. He wanted to go to the grocery store to buy some dinner for tonight, but I didn't want to. I wanted to walk there later to get some exercise. We flipped a coin. Yes, we did. It was his idea. He won. I wore a sour face which made my boyfriend angry, so instead of shopping for dinner, we stopped at a convenience store to buy a simple jar of coffee beans. It was about a 2-minute inconvenience. I was happy. I got my way. This is where it starts to get creepy. On the way home, traffic was slow. We were in a long line of barely moving cars. Now, if the coin flip had gone my way, we would have been about 7 or so cars in front, I'm guessing. In front of us, I could see a car with the same make and model as ours, the same color, the same dint in the side, and in the same spot or close enough from what I could remember. I counted 8 cars ahead of us. The road kind of snaked in a semicircle, so it was easy to see the cars in front. That morning I had written the word "hello" in the ice in the back window. The sun had melted the ice by now, but you could see the shape of the word in both our car and his car. By now I'm starting to get excited and freaked out. I'm not so skeptical of anything and try to keep an open mind, but I also don't jump to strange conclusions, especially when it could simply be a coincidence. But these coincidences were very similar. I eventually tell my boyfriend, "Hey, look, doesn't that car look like ours? Even has the hello in the back window." The man in the car double turns his face to look out his window. It looks just like my boyfriend, I swear. Even wears the same blue jumper my boyfriend wears every day for work. There is someone sitting next to him in the passenger seat. Only I can't see if it's a boy or a girl. Traffic moved on ahead and we slowly creep up behind the traffic in front of us. We drive. And we are getting closer to our car double. My boyfriend shouts, "What the fuck?" Made me jump out of my seat. "What?" He said, "The license plate is the same." We follow the car into our estate, but when we turn the corner towards our house, they're gone. My boyfriend gets out and checks the license plate. It's the same. That's all I've got. I apologize for my bad description. I know it sounds so far-fetched, but I swear on my father's grave it happened. Saying that, I wouldn't believe it either. My conclusion: I would love for this to be a glitch, but I can't say that. I'm thinking the license plates were different but similar enough, 1 or 2 numbers off, for my boyfriend to get excited. I've given you true details of what I've seen, and what my boyfriend has seen. What do you guys think? 2. I'm a female in my early 30s. I'm born in the Swedish part of Lapland. The story I'm about to tell you happened 17 years ago, long before people had cell phones and cameras. So I couldn't really take a picture of this odd thing that occurred right before me. I lived in a really small Sami village up a mountain with no neighbors around, having 5 kilometers down to my bus stop. I actually had to walk all those kilometers every morning so I could get to my school bus. This day, however, my father was going to drive me down the mountain because he was to be working late and wanted to give me a lift. It was early spring and really cold and foggy outside. If I'm going to describe a little how we actually lived, there is not so much. Our house was the only house up the mountain that anyone lived in. Behind and around there was a thick forest. In front of it, however, there was one more house that had belonged to my father's uncle, but it was empty during that time. Between our houses there was a small field, but we never entered that field because it was a huge snake's nest in there. I had just stepped out in the porch, waiting for my father, when weird things started to happen. It was almost as if the sound around me got distorted, and the fog somehow got thicker. I stood frozen and just stared out on the field. I was totally unable to move. All of a sudden, I hear people screaming, dogs barking, and then I see reindeers, hundreds of them, their hooves stamping the ground, and that grouting sound they make. That distinct smell in the air. They ran all over the small road leading down the mountain, over the field and into the woods. I just stood there and stared. I heard the people screaming and shouting, and I couldn't move. After a while, I felt something poking me on my shoulder. My father had stepped out and obviously seen me standing like a zombie on the porch. He told me I had been standing still for over 15 minutes, not blinking, not responding at all. When I eventually woke up again, everything was quiet. No sounds, no smell, like nothing ever happened. I was so surprised that I actually had to go down to the field to have a look. Nothing. Not a single straw had been stepped on down in the ground. But what I saw and experienced during those minutes was so real. Some years later, though, the Samis in the village actually told me that they used this walking trail a long time ago to get their reindeer to their pasture. Now, 17 years later, they started to use it again. Not even close to how many reindeers I saw then, but they are trying to keep the culture alive. We don't live in that house anymore, even though it's still standing there. All grown up with kids of my own, I decided to move into the town. So did my father. But even today, so many years later, I still remember it like it really, really happened for real. Was that a glitch? Did I experience someone else's memories, or was it all in my brain? I never knew about the walking trail, because like I said, we never went through the fields. There were too many snakes, so we were afraid. I have no idea. 3. It was about 2 years ago. I was in my grandparents' basement. Let me set this scene. The basement has concrete walls, which is mostly underground. The stairs are right in front of me, and under the steps, there is a green door that only a dwarf could fit in. There are pipes over the top of me that are hollow, so you can hear everything that touches them very clearly. There is also a basketball laying on the ground right in front of me. My grandfather is a freak for bows and arrows, not plastic ones like real metal ones that you could kill a bear with. Real points, and they're very sharp. Something in my head thought it would be awesome to use one of the bow and arrows to shoot the basketball, so I grabbed the coolest bow and sharpest looking arrow. I stood about 3 feet off from the ball and loaded the arrow. I pulled back and released. This is where it gets weird. As soon as I let go of the bowstring, I felt this strong feeling of regret and sadness. I didn't know what was going on, but I specifically remember the arrow leaving my hand, so I know I'm not crazy. I let go of the arrow and it hit the ball, but it immediately shot back at me. I thought the ball would pop, but the arrow came shooting back at me. I saw the point and heard a loud bang. I saw a white light after that. What happens next stays in my mind at all times. My eyes opened and I saw my body, my own body, on the ground, with an arrow through its head. Blood was sprayed all over the room and on the pipes. It was my grandparents' basement. Everything was where it was a minute ago, when I shot the ball, except the ball was rolling away, and by now, it was across the room. There was a huge puddle of blood next to my head. Everything went black, and the craziest part happened. I reappeared in my body, standing with the bow and arrow in hand. The arrow was pulled back, ready to shoot, except one thing was different. The ball was on the other side of the room, the same place that it had been when I saw my dead body on the ground in that puddle of blood. I gently put the bow and arrow down and went upstairs and cried. I've had nightmares and dreams of what happened that day. I'll never know how any of that happens, or what happened at all. But when it comes down to it, I'm thankful. 4. My grandmother was a collector of many things, mostly Avon products, since she was an Avon lady for many years. But she did also collect pennies which were dated in the years that her grandkids were born, and also $2 bills. Shortly before she died in 2002, she distributed the pennies to us grandchildren, and also divided up the stack of $2 bills. I ended up with about 15 or so of the bills. I have no idea what happened to the pennies because they were pennies, but I kept the $2 bills in a small wooden box with some other special trinkets tucked away in a closet somewhere. Anyway, about 5 or 6 years go by, and I was living with my husband in an apartment. We were expecting some friends, so I was doing some last-minute picking up. For some reason or another, I walked into the master bedroom and immediately forgot what I had gone into the bedroom for. So I turned on my heel and walked right back out. When I turned around and noticed, laying on the floor, right where I had just walked, a crisp $2 bill. I know for a fact that it had not been there a second before, and my husband had been in the kitchen on the other side of the apartment the whole time. About that time, I hear the expected friends coming up the stairs, and I wonder if they somehow had managed to drop it before they had even gotten up the stairs. Even though I knew this was unlikely, I asked them if it was theirs. They looked at me kind of odd, then laughed, because they thought I was playing a joke on them. These friends were Taiwanese and didn't know that there was such a thing as a $2 bill. So it wasn't theirs. Which leaves me wondering where the heck this thing came from, because I don't keep any cash on me, let alone a random $2 bill. Especially just hanging out around the house. So was this a glitch, or did my grandma decide to leave me a tangible message from the other side? Either way, I dug out the wood box from the back of the closet and put it in the stack with the others. 5. I've had several glitchy experiences in my life, but the first ever happened at the famous ancient monument of Stonehenge, and was witnessed by both me and my dad. We were there on a day trip when I was 7 or 8, which was the first and only time I have ever been there. Stonehenge itself is directly next to the A303 motorway, a major road with lots of traffic traveling at high speeds. Soon after arriving, I remember feeling compelled to turn away from the monument and look towards the motorway. My eyes immediately fixed on a particular van, and in that same instant, time appeared to slow down. That's when I realized I was looking at my aunt, uncle, and 4 cousins drive by in their red minivan, a car I had been in many times myself. I remember clearly looking at each of my family members' faces individually to be sure it was them, because I could hardly believe what I was seeing. There was plenty of time to make out all the details, since everything seemed to be happening in slow motion. At this point, my dad was taking pictures of the monument, so I grabbed his arm and told him to turn around and look too. Right away, he saw them as well, and expressed utter amazement. After a few more seconds, it felt like we snapped back out of a dreamlike state, and were instantly transported back to regular old Stonehenge. My dad is a very rational person, and I could tell the experience unsettled him, but he tried to brush it off as just a weird, unlikely coincidence. Now, even at this point, the experience was highly strange. From our stationary position, the cars on the motorway passed by very quickly. Hardly enough time for me to spot them. Look at all 6 of my family members individually, then grab my dad so he could do the same. I don't know how to explain it other than it made sense while I was seeing it, but an instant later it seemed somehow ephemeral. Even as a child, I knew that the logic of it didn't mesh with the normal, material world. We carried on with our sightseeing a bit longer, before making the long drive home. My dad called his brother, my uncle, that evening, to tell him we had spotted them. That's when my uncle said that they were nowhere near Stonehenge that day, and hadn't been there for a year. Considering they live 3 hours away, his answer was very reasonable. My dad didn't bother trying to explain it away. He just got quiet and seemed perplexed. We never really talked about it again in detail after that. I have no idea how to explain this. It 100% was them, but that's impossible under normal circumstances. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Glitch in the Matrix Stories, Episode 15. Now, I'm aware it's a little bit shorter than usual this week, but it was either a slightly shorter video or no video at all. And had a pretty lengthy paranormal video to get recording. You'll see tomorrow. One of the stories is, well, right now it's about 30 minutes long. It's probably going to be about 25, 26 by the time I'm edited. Maybe a bit more. So the video itself will be quite long. And I didn't have time to wait to source other stories. Otherwise it might have meant the glitch video went up late today. So it's a bit shorter. Sorry about that. I'll try and get a longer one together for next week. And with that, I'm going to have to head off for now. Because, yet again, sleep deprived, noises, the usual nonsense these days. I swear to God, it's like they're just drilling on the walls for the fun of it at this point. Right, anyway, I'm going to head off for now and get on with things, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.